Oh, compatriots, join me as I dive deep into the controversial question. Are Endsars protesters really just obedient movement supporters? Did you know that the Endsars protests of October 2020 became one of the largest youth-led demonstrations in Nigeria's history, with thousands of young people mobilizing across the country and even internationally? This movement, fueled by anger over police brutality and government inefficiency, displayed an unprecedented level of coordination and civic engagement. But does this same spirit of activism connect to the obedient movement, which surged in support of Peter Obi's 2023 presidential bid? Or are they fundamentally different forces within Nigeria's political landscape? To understand this dynamic, we must explore the origins and motivations behind both movements. At first glance, the protests in Nigeria seem to be driven by a passionate youth who demand systemic change across various societal issues. The Endsars protests ignited a fierce call for police reform and justice for victims of extrajudicial killings, representing a breaking point for many Nigerians. In contrast, the obedient movement emerged as a political force advocating for good governance and transparency, seeking to break away from the entrenched political elite in Nigeria. However, skepticism arises when critics suggest that the two movements are merely extensions of each other, hinting at a coordinated agenda behind their emergence. This assumption overlooks the intricate nature of social movements, where individuals often engage based on their personal convictions rather than a singular orchestrated plan. Ultimately, both movements represent a significant awakening among Nigerians, with many feeling empowered to demand accountability and change from their leaders. The motivations behind the Endsars protests were deeply personal for many participants, driven by their own experiences with police brutality and injustice. Protesters came from diverse backgrounds, including students, young professionals, and entrepreneurs, all united by their frustration with the special anti-robbery squad's excessive force. Many had either experienced harassment firsthand or knew someone who had suffered at the hands of SARS, making their anger palpable and personal. These grievances were not politically motivated in the sense of party allegiance, but were rooted in a demand for basic human rights and dignity for all citizens. While some protesters later became politically active in movements like the Obedient Movement, it would be misleading to claim that Endsars was a stepping stone designed to halt a specific political figure's rise. The Endsars protests were a powerful expression of collective grief and resilience, where voices long silenced rose in unison against systemic abuse. The voices of the Endsars protesters echo with unwavering resolve, driven by a profound commitment to justice and a rejection of political manipulation. Each testimony reveals the human cost of their fight, as many protesters recount stories of personal loss and the relentless pursuit of accountability from those in power. This shared trauma has ignited a fierce determination among the youth, who boldly challenge the status quo and demand systemic change. Alongside this, the obedient movement emerges as a response to widespread economic hardships and a growing discontent with the current governance. While both movements highlight a collective dissatisfaction with Nigeria's leadership, they diverge in their motivations and timelines, with Endsars igniting long before the 2023 elections. The Endsars protests were a grassroots reaction to persistent police brutality, fueled by the anguish of countless families affected by violence. What do you think? Are these movements connected in a deeper way, or are they simply reflections of an evolving civic consciousness in Nigeria? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're interested in how youth activism is shaping Nigeria's political future, check out our next video on the power of grassroots movements in Africa.